Research and legal analysis, long-term placements and children with NDD. 1. Introduction. This appendix summarizes research-based arguments and legal analysis regarding long-term placements under the Swedish Care of Young Persons Law. The purpose is to highlight risks to the child's mental health, development, and attachment, particularly for children with neurodevelopmental disorders, and to clarify the importance of proportionality in coercive care. 2. Research on placements and child well-being. Placements in foster or institutional care are associated with documented risks to children's mental health and social development. Long-term or unstable placements can cause emotional stress and anxiety, weakened attachment to parents, mental health problems, school difficulties, and relationship issues, increased risk of re-entry into care after reunification. Studies show that children in care exhibit higher rates of suicidal thoughts, behavioral problems, and social marginalization compared with children who receive adequate support at home. 3. Children with NDD. Children with neurodevelopmental disorders are particularly vulnerable during placement. Risks include impaired emotional regulation and recovery, increased stress from environmental changes, regression in development, misinterpretation of stress responses as behavioral problems. Research shows that children with NDD who receive adapted support at home generally have better long-term outcomes than those placed outside the family. 4. Attachment and reunification. Attachment is a fundamental biological and psychological process that develops through continuous daily care. It cannot be paused during long separation. Long-term separation from primary caregivers can lead to insecure or disorganized attachment, emotional estrangement, perception that home is no longer the child's home. Reunification after long-term placement is often associated with mental health issues and stress, relationship difficulties, increased risk of re-entry into care. These difficulties should not be interpreted as evidence of parental unsuitability, but as consequences of long separation and insufficient support. 5. Circular problem. Long-term placements may create problems later used to justify continued care. Examples include instability, mental health issues, justification for continued placement, environmental changes, behavioral reactions, argument against reunification. This cycle risks reinforcing separation rather than protecting the child. 6. Legal assessment under LVU. LVU is intended as a temporary protective law. Coercive care should only be used when absolutely necessary and for the shortest time possible. The principle of proportionality requires that interventions do not exceed what is necessary to protect the child. Long-term placements without active work for reunification risk violating both the law's intent and the child's right to family life under the Convention on the Rights of the Child. 7. Conclusions and recommendations. Long-term placements are not neutral. They affect relationships and attachment. Separation itself can cause harm. Children with NDD are especially vulnerable and require stability, continuity, and adapted support. LVU implementation must actively work to preserve and support the child's relationship with their parents. Continued placement decisions should be based on actual risks, not consequences of prior separation. Key statement. When a child is kept separated from their parents for a long time, the relationship fundamentally changes. Using the child's distance, weakened attachment, or difficulties during reunification as justification for continued care is using the consequences of separation as evidence for its necessity. This violates research findings, the principle of proportionality, and the child's right to family life.